very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Zoom. Tonight it's Zoom again because out of deference to some health conditions or concerns on the part of our guest, and we're happy to have the guest on our program, and you'll see why once I tell you who it is. And he is, of course, none other than the very outspoken and the vociferous, which is about the same thing, isn't it? Anyway, the very outspoken Mr. Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam, who is, of course, the leader of the Tamil National People's Front, and he sits in Parliament there representing his constituency, which is Jaffna. Very good evening to you, Mr. Ponnambalam.
Very good evening, Faraz. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to do this amongst such challenging conditions that's affecting our country. And I hope that you will be keeping well. Now, I want to ask you, Mr. Ponnambalam, since the war, 2009, finished and terrorism was virtually put to bed, what is the real progress that the people in the former conflict areas have received? What's the real progress there?
Well, I mean, if I'm bold enough, I'll say that it's none. And I say none purely because it depends on what your values are for us. You know? So, for example, here is a region that has been completely, razed to the ground, more or less. I mean, huge tracts of land have been destroyed. And with that destruction also comes opportunity, because it gives you a chance to actually develop the place with modern thinking, with modern facilities, and considering that the Northeast is physically, geographically also in the extremes of the country when you compare to Colombo, and the proximity to various resources is so scarce and difficult to get to, then it gives you a perfect opportunity to have planned development. I think during 2001, when Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe signed the ceasefire agreement, at that time there was a lot of thinking on the basis of the development for the war-affected areas to actually take on some fairly, fairly comprehensive development structures, so that you have, for example, tried and tested models in the West that have actually worked. Where you take infrastructure development to areas, but more importantly, you take services, to those areas, and once those services are there, on its own, you'll find entrepreneurship coming in and a lot of private sector development. So that was the sort of thinking during the ceasefire agreement. Then, of course, that sort of unraveled, and then you had the war. And since 2009, both the Rajapaksa regime as well as the Maithripala Sirisena Ranil Wickremesinghe regime or government didn't show development. So, for example, if you take their annual budgets, I think every single year, each government just kept putting off coming up with a development plan for the war-affected areas, saying that the funding as well as other sort of input will come from donors.
I put it to you, Mr. Ponnambalam, that successive governments in Sri Lanka have only paid lip service to developing these challenging areas like the former conflict areas. And because they don't really do anything about it, anything concrete, because they fear a backlash from, or they perceive to have a fear of a backlash from the majority of the population, which is Sinhalese, that they will stand accused by, say, the Marxists and the opposition parties of the day, saying, "Oh yeah, these guys are not really patriots because they're going and developing the Tamil areas." Do you think that is actually what is happening? Because Mahinda Rajapaksa had a sterling opportunity at the end of the war to capitalize on the sentiment enjoyed by and displayed by the entire country. And he could have done it, but it was more a little bit of PR than anything concrete. Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, along with President Sirisena, came in, and they did nothing else other than, well, rob the central bank. But apart from that, they only again paid lip service, especially to the international partners who were clamoring for accountability and reconciliation and so on and so forth. Do you think that's the problem, that they're frightened that the majority will not cast their vote their way if they were to develop the North and the Northeast?
Yes, I think that is a huge part of the problem. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't even say that they paid lip service, because if you take, Mahinda Rajapaksa did pay a lot of attention to infrastructure, particularly roads, but apart from that, there was hardly anything. The Ranil Wickremesinghe, Maithripala Sirisena government, for the first, for the first 3 years, Faraz, did literally nothing. I mean, they did not even build up from where Mahinda Rajapaksa left with regards to infrastructure. Even they did nothing. And then when they realized that their government is becoming very unpopular, they started this a program where, I forget the name of it. I think it's DB Neguma, or no, not DB Neguma. There was another program which basically allowed MPs to choose smaller roads, smaller bridges being repaired, and that sort of thing, just to have their photograph and a board at the beginning of every road to say that they have sort of repaired it. So I mean, other than for that, nothing planned has ever taken place, and that is sad, because I mean, when you have an opportunity where the place has been so badly, basically you have to almost start from scratch. It's a perfect, it's a perfect opportunity to have planned development, which in Sri Lanka is actually very, very rare to see. But even now, I don't see anyone thinking on those lines. If I can just mention, I mean, once before when I came on your program, I said this. I said, two things of concern. One is the people in the Northeast are financially, lagging far behind the rest of the country. I mean, when it comes to their economic power, it's at the lowest, and they're surviving primarily because they have relatives abroad who make remittances. So one of the concerns that we had, and this our party has been trying to sort of lobby, even before we came into parliament, we were trying to put this out, is that if the Northeast could have been declared a war-affected zone, and where you can have certain special conditions to allow that population to first protect its economy and then build on it, but at the same time, where you can have this planned development process that provides services to that area, and actually in the process might even be a blueprint for the Tamil diaspora themselves to think that, look, maybe things are moving in the right direction. Maybe the fact that the Tamil population or the Northeast war-affected people are treated separately, the government recognizes that they're vulnerable and want to protect them itself is a good sign. They might have themselves been willing to invest quite considerably, but we missed all of that. We missed all of that. And today we're in a situation where, quite frankly, I don't know whether the government has enough money to even spend on its own electorate. The president, whether he has money to spend in his own electorate. So we are all back to square one.
I've just come back from the east coast of Sri Lanka, and I noticed, the lack of opportunity, but I also noticed the resilience of the people of the east there, in the areas I was there. And it became very clear that big companies like the telephony companies, the Mobitels, the Dialogues, the Airtels of this world, are there, and they provide, not in thousands, but they do supply a service, and they provide opportunities for employment. The hotels along in the bay there at Pasikuda and so on. There are limited opportunities, but nevertheless, a lot of them come from the local areas and so on. And we feel for them, but feeling for them isn't good enough. The youth there need to be taught English. For example, I found that the lack of English or even Sinhalese is very poor out there. And there need to be specific training and specific investment. For example, if somebody wants to get a passport or a passport, they're going to have to travel to Colombo. Why can't we have passport offices out in the north? And immigration, a tourist traveling in that area finds that their visas expire, they're going to have to come all the way to Colombo, which appears to me to be highly inequitable, and certainly the government not showing a lack of sympathy and understanding of the real issues.
Well, with regards to, just a detail for us, with regards to passports and even identity cards, actually those facilities are provided to the districts. But I think COVID essentially, brought all of that down to square one. But once again, it is the process is that it's not even decentralized. What happens effectively is that you can apply for a passport in the local kacheri, and then everything is sent to Colombo. So there is no decentralization of process. So it takes a hell of a long time for someone in say Jaffna or any other outer peripheral districts to apply and get what they want. So you're right in the sense that for name's sake, you have certain facilities. The Kacheri will offer certain facilities, for example, licenses, identity card issuances, and all of that. But the process is done in Colombo. So it's just a collection point. It's nothing but a collection point. So, but you're absolutely right. Even when it comes to other health services, when it comes to education, the idea ought to be not to have children, want to, if they want to actually make it, or if their idea of making it is to come to Colombo. Rather, those schools in those respective districts should be developed to a point where you don't need to think in terms of Colombo is everything, and that you have to move in that way. But the thinking, quite honestly, is just amazing, because whichever government, the idea is that everything must be controlled from Colombo, and if possible, everyone must come to them. The idea that some school in Jaffna can perform as well as any school in Colombo is something that I don't think they quite like.
Is this something of a control freak syndrome?
Yes, I think the political culture is such that they want everybody to come and be at their feet, and that means that obviously you hoard, and that is the culture.
Was it a long time ago? One of the Rajapaksas, maybe Mahinda, actually said that there's only one type of person in Sri Lanka. You're either with them or you're a traitor.
There you go.
On that note, we'll take a short break, and let's see what that young team from Newsfirst have cooked up for this evening's primetime news. We'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
රැස් විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Health trade unions meet with the subject minister. Indian fishermen issue reaches Minister Douglas. Sri Lankans to get a digital identity card from India. Surcharge tax on EPF and ETF.
TV1 රැස් විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. I'm in conversation with the leader of the Tamil National People's Front, Mr. Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam. Very good evening again to you, Mr. Ponnambalam. And let me ask you, what's the status of all these rules to do with provincial councils and thereafter education, housing? How does this all play out in reality out in the former conflict areas and other areas of the Northeast?
So just to take off from where we left off just before the break, for us, because the question with regards to provincial council, I think is a perfect example of what I was saying before. Now, the provincial councils, if you take health, you have the National Health Service, as well as you have the provincial health service, right? So the provincial councils normally only have 4 ministries, and one of the ministries is actually the health ministry. But the funding is such, is based on a sort of scheme where obviously the national hospitals are given far greater resources than those within the provincial councils. So if you're a patient, just think about it. If you're a patient and you want the best care, you want your hospital to be at the best levels. So the patients themselves, along with the doctors, would rather move to the central government and ask the center to bring their hospitals under them, quote unquote, upgrade them to national health service centers, rather than actually ask the government to provide the sort of funding that is required to sort of develop the hospital that falls within the provincial councils to the levels of the hospital that comes under the center. So this is deliberately done now, despite the fact that people such as us who actually want devolution, want powers to be taken to the areas so that you can sort out things in the Northeast itself rather than come to Colombo for everything. We find this highly problematic. And it is highly problematic when you look at, current sort of modern developmental ideas. I mean, the idea should be that if you can sort out whatever problem at the very lowest levels, you should allow it to be sorted out at that level.
Sorry, as we're running out of time, do you feel, Mr. Ponnambalam, that in your lifetime that we will see a certain devolution of powers to the provincial councils?
Well, the only ray of hope that I see is that today we have social media. We have social media, being catching on in a big way. And I think in the social media there is genuinely a debate. People are questioning their leaders like they've never done before. People are questioning policies that they have laid, that they have laid sort of blindly loyal to, and are opening their eyes. They're seeing alternatives in other parts of the world working brilliant. So my view is that take, for example, this present government, the Rajapaksas have been almost undefeatable. But this time around, despite President Gotabaya Rajapaksa getting a massive margin and a 2/3 majority in parliament, within 1 year, he's probably become one of the most unpopular leaders, and this government has become one of the most unpopular governments in the history. And the fall has been so dramatic and drastic that, people trusted these leaders and voted them into power in large numbers, are today questioning how they were cheated, what they were told. All of it is being questioned. And that culture of questioning, I think, will also lead to, and I'm hoping that it will lead to not only the Sinhalese, I mean everybody, to rethink about Sri Lanka, rethink of the model that is Sri Lanka today, rethink of the structures that is in Sri Lanka today. It's a highly centralized. It's almost like you need to, in some way, have some sort of connection to somebody, to someone in high up in the government to have anything done. So my view is that with COVID, with the way in which the debate around COVID has been taking place in Parliament, within government and outside, my view is that for the first time there is a bit of hope that because of social media, people will question these traditionally rejected notions like devolution and power sharing and whether it's going to be unitary or shall we actually consider federal, and all of these things. I hope one day there will be a genuine debate because people can now access information freely enough to have an impartial sort of idea of what each of these concepts are.
And just to touch on something a little bit current, how do you view these challenges being posed by Indian fishermen encroaching upon our the Sea of Sri Lanka and impacting on the opportunities, the limited opportunities as they are, but certainly impinging on those opportunities, the Sri Lankan fishermen suffering at the hands of the Indian fishermen?
No, it's a huge problem for us. It's a huge problem. In fact, we've filed a adjournment motion tomorrow, and it'll be debated after the main sessions of Parliament tomorrow evening. The problem is this: the fact that the the Tamil Nadu fishermen are encroaching into the northern waters is a daily occurrence. Mm-hmm. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop unless the Navy controls the borders. You see, it's just not going to happen because there is this huge discrepancy with regards to the facilities that the northern fishermen of Sri Lanka have when compared to the sort of very modern, large trawlers, multi-day fishing trawlers that the Tamil Nadu fishermen have. So the capacity for them to fish in deep seas as well as go far away is so much higher that they're going to want to encroach, especially since the sea space between Tamil Nadu and the northern part of Sri Lanka is so small. So unless the Navy actually is there on a daily basis, trying to prevent these encroachments, the fishermen in the north and in the near Trinkapalli and Mullaitivu are going to suffer, and they're suffering every day. These northern fishermen, these Indian fishermen, actually come. They use illegal means. You're not supposed to be bottom trawling, but they use illegal fishing means. They're literally destroying the fish beds. They also, in the process, what they do is they come up to the shore where the local fishermen have their nets out, and they destroy the nets so that they can't even fish. Every day, a family is losing about 50,000 rupees worth of assets, of fishing nets, and various things like that. So it is actually just it is a process. Unless it is stemmed, unless it is stopped forthwith, it is going to pauperize that entire fishing community in the northern district. We have repeatedly spoken to the government on this. We have asked the Navy. I mean, the Navy occupies private people's lands, saying that they're providing services. The only service that the actual fishing people want is to prevent these, outside fishermen coming and encroaching. And that is the only thing that the Navy doesn't do. They don't stop the drugs coming in. They don't stop the encroachers coming in. But all the local fishermen are, there are so many restrictions that they have to face. So one has to ask them, what is the point of the Navy being there?
One quick last question, perhaps. How about foreign direct investment made by those whose roots and origins are from the former conflict areas? Do you think any of these former Sri Lankans will return to Sri Lanka, dollars, euros, and sterling to hand, when, for example, the city of Jaffna, the pipe-borne water amounts to approximately 2% of that population? Do you think that the facilities encourage the return of former Sri Lankans who might want to come and invest in their land of birth?
I think there is a lot of interest in people wanting to come and invest. But the investment that is taking place now is purely people developing their property. So if the house has got damaged, they're just repairing their house and restoring it. But it's not going beyond that. But can you blame the diaspora, Faraz? You have almost any credible diaspora organization that the people from the Northeast have created in those countries, being on the banned list in Sri Lanka. So you have no one to actually come and talk to. You have so many hundreds of names of people who actually are community leaders in those respective countries and in those respective communities. So I mean, the government has to make up its mind. It can't go on to portray the diaspora as the demon, as the enemy. As a diaspora that is trying to restart the LTT or something like that, and try to sell that sort of picture to the people in the South so that they get distracted from all the government's own failings. But at the same time, you can't have the president then saying, we want to talk to the diaspora, we would like them to come and invest. They both don't go together. So I think, first of all, once again, I think the government is schizophrenic. It has to have a sort of comprehensive, holistic plan. I don't think it does. It is going from one crisis to another, and in the process, making just unrelated or rather conflicting sort of policy statements that is just not going to come into fruition.
What holds the future for Sri Lanka as quickly as you can?
I think there has to be a sea change. I think there has to be a structural change in Sri Lanka. I think we need a political culture that is just completely different, has nothing to do with the last 74 years. And if people in Sri Lanka don't realize that after 74 years, we are begging, I mean, in South Asia, we are the last country, and now we're scraping the barrel. And if we don't realize that in 74 years, we've got it all wrong, and that it is time to actually rethink and do away with all these sort of, demonization of various concepts that were thrown at us in the past. If you're not prepared to question all of those stories that were sold to us in order to maintain the status quo, I think, I'm afraid, the future doesn't, look very attractive. But if we do question, and if we actually do a bit of soul searching and are prepared to, find out what other examples around the world have delivered, then I think there are ways to move forward. But it can't be the same old stuff. You can't do the same failed thing over and over again and expect things to change. It's not going to happen. My view, I've told this in Parliament as well. If the opposition must be an opposition, it must come up with new ideas. I think the worry here is that we are trying to outdo the Rajapaksas in their own game, and that is really not the way forward. So I think someone has to break. The present leader of the opposition, in my view, there is that opportunity because he's not looking for he's not looking for a family sort of political whatever. It's he's there. He's a capable person. He has I think he has an open mind. He must be able to take a stand to a point where he makes a break. I think that's important. So not just the leader of the opposition, anyone who aspires to lead, I think must think in terms of making a clean break from the past, must realize that it's a failed narrative, and must think anew. And if they are prepared to do that, I think you'll find a tremendous amount of partners. Traditionally, people who, like us, might not have wanted to cooperate, will definitely be willing to cooperate. You will have youth who are disillusioned today and who are looking to actually go abroad to university and hopefully stay on abroad, might actually think in terms of coming back. There has to be something new, and if the people at the grassroots can also show that thirst for something new, for something fresh, then I'm pretty sure that even leaders high up will get the courage. I think the problem now is that we've had the Rajapaksas who've been trying to sell their brand of, quite frankly, racism to a point where they think that is the in thing. And people right through seem to think that, well, I mean, they got a 2/3, so maybe that is what everybody wants, and are too afraid to take a stand. So the fact that the Rajapaksas have failed within just 2 years, within 2 years of getting elected, I think gives us that opportunity, and that opportunity should not be missed.
Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam, thank you very much for being on Newsline Zoom. We appreciate your candor, your openness, and your foresight. And on that note, let's take a peek. Let's cross over to the primetime news from News First. Take care, and as always, God bless you all.